Today, we're going to talk about the 9 books that I read in the month of February. All right, so let's get into it. First up, I read a book that had been in the back of my mind for quite some time, and that book was Dracula by Bram Stoker. I feel like as a horror fan, I should read some of the classic horror, and that is one that I had wanted to try again, because when I was younger, I think I was 11 or 12, I tried reading it. I thought it was painfully boring and never picked it up again until now. I read it, I finished it. I thought it was decent. Is it something I would read again? No. I like the atmosphericness of it. I like the story. Some of it definitely dragged in spots and whatnot. But overall, I thought it was a decent book, especially since it was written in the late 1800s. And a lot of times when I read older books, I just don't vibe with them. But this, I really liked how the atmosphere and the story built. And it was interesting enough to hold my attention. After that, I read Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinniman. And this series is wild, wacky, insane. It's part video game, part D&D, part RPG, all the stuff that I flippin' love. I flew through the first book. You follow Carl and Princess Donut. The world has basically ended, and this Brant Corporation has taken over our planet, and so all these dungeon doors pop up all over the world. If you come in and run the dungeon, you're part of this reality show that's being shown across the galaxy. And if anyone actually makes it to level 18 of the dungeon and succeeds, they will take back control of their planet on all the resources and all of that stuff. Here's the thing, no one's ever made it past level 13. Carl and Donut go in and the insane adventures begin. This is a series that I'll be reading this year. I don't read a whole lot of series. Usually if I do, it's one series a year. I've actually already finished the second, and I have the third sitting here at my house that I plan to start very soon. It's awesome. So Carl and Donut get down there. Immediately there's goblins on this death dozer chasing them, and they finally make it to a safe room where the guildmaster is, and they meet Mordecai, who is this ratkin, and he's gonna give them the rules of the game and try to help them along on their journey if they survive and whatnot. And so you have them get in there, and they start to slowly but surely find better gear, build up their attribute points, and hopefully make it to the next level of the dungeon. Alright, so after that, I read a witchy book, which is The Bane Witch by Ava Morgan, and this follows the main character. And when she was a kid, she had eaten pokeweed berries, which are very, very poisonous. And so when her mom found her, she finds her in next to this guy who's dead. And the girl was fine, but when they went to the hospital, the mother was like, oh, she had seizures and this happened to the other. And the little girl didn't remember that happening. And so her whole life, she's been drawn to trying to eat these poisonous plants. And her mother never really told her who she was and refused to, and tried to hide it from her and tried to suppress her by putting her on different drugs and whatnot. And so later in life, her mom passes away, and she had met her one aunt, Aunt Myrtle. And Aunt Myrtle's like, if you ever need me, I'm in Crow Lake up in New York, and at this point in time, she has a really horrible husband. She is plotting to fake her own death to escape him, because if she doesn't, he's going to kill her. And so she escapes, she goes to her aunt's, and then her aunt starts to fill her in on who she actually is, and that she's a Bane Witch, she's someone who eats poison, and her aunt is part of this whole venery group that they eat poison and they take care of evil men and rid the world of them. And so you follow this story, and she comes into her own. The venery doesn't want to accept her at first because they're like, she's too old, this, that, and the other. So she's going to have to prove herself to them. And there's been this serial killer in the area. They want her to basically take care of him. And so our story kicks off, and it's a wild ride. It's witchy. It's weird. I liked it a lot. And I like the atmosphere of it too, because I love stories that take place in the woods and in that kind of area. It's great. All right, so after that one, I read The White Hot by Kiera Alegria Juarez. This is a short little novella, and it's basically a letter this mother wrote to her daughter, who she left home when her daughter was 10 and just kind of took off. And she hadn't really planned on leaving for good. She came from a multi-generational home, lived with her mom and her abuela, and then her daughter. And it seems like her mom and her abuela just had really abusive prior relationships with their husbands and stuff. And just also, the main character had a lot of rage and anger, and she called it the white hot, when she'd get really angry. And so years later, she sends this letter to her daughter, and you read it, and the writing is so beautiful and emotional. It's such a fantastic little novella. And I originally picked it up because on the cover it said it was Pulitzer Prize winner, and I thought it meant the book. Not the book, though, but the author. So the writing is beautiful, fantastic, sad, bittersweet, so many things. And it's a great little book. Okay, so after that one, I read The Talisman by Stephen King and Peter Straub. It took me a couple months to get through it. I was reading it in between everything else, because when I read a book that big, it's hard to just sit down and read one of those all at once. And so I'd pick it up, put it down, pick it up, put it down. And then they announced that it is official. The Talisman 3 is coming out this year. And I'm like, okay, time to pick up the pace. And I was like, all right, we're going to read at least 20 pages a day. And so I started doing that. And then eventually I just got super sucked into the book and I finished it. And it's awesome. Stories about Jack Sawyer. He's 12 years old. His mother is dying. He has a uncle who's an evil sack of crap, Uncle Morgan. And there's this other place called the Territories. Jack and his mom, they leave California. They go to this hotel on the other side of the country in New Hampshire called the Alhambra. She goes there because the mom, basically, she wants to be in a place that has good memories for her because she's basically going there to die. And Jack, he's kind of like, doesn't know what to do with himself while he's there. So he finds this like amusement park that's nearby, and it's off season, so it's not really open, but he wanders around there and he runs into this guy, Speedy Parker, and he meets him. And Speedy seems to have met Jack before, and he alludes to this here and there. And eventually, as their relationship goes on, Speedy tells him there might be a way that he could save his mom. And he's going to have to travel, and he's going to have to go between the territories. And at first, Jack doesn't believe it's real, that there's this other dimension and all of that. But eventually he finds out that, yeah, there is. And there's also what is called twinners. Like, his mom has a twinner in this other territory, and that's Laura Delosian, who's like the queen of this land as well. So if Jack saves his mom, he also saves Queen Laura as well. And so he starts off his adventure, and he's going to have to go from New Hampshire all the way to California. And so he's going to flip between the territories on the way, and on the way he meets a cast and crew of very interesting characters, some very beloved, such as Wolf. Wolf was his friend, who's a werewolf. Reminded me so much of Tom Cullen from The Stand that I'm kind of convinced that Tom Cullen was Wolf's twinner, even though it's in a different book. But Stephen King's books are all tied into the Dark Tower universe. Whole reason I read The Talisman is because it was loosely tied into the Dark Tower series. And so you have like the idea of the territories, which is from the Dark Tower, and then you also have like the idea of twinners, which is a thing in the Dark Tower as well. And some of the part animal weird creatures in the Talisman, very reminiscent of low men, if not low men. And the journey really felt like a Dark Tower kind of quest journey. The ups and the downs, the highs and the lows, the emotional quality. It's an awesome book. I absolutely loved it. I'm looking forward to reading the second one, Black House. And so hopefully I'll be able to get to that one and get that done in time, because not the Dark Tower. The Talisman 3 comes out, as far as I know, October of this year. So super excited for that. I'm so excited this year about the Dungeon Crawler Carl series that I had no plans to read whatsoever, recommended to me by a friend. So what a pleasant, wonderful surprise. And I'm loving that. And there's like 8 books. So a lot to look forward to with that. And then like the Talisman, I had no idea how much I would like that one. I like that quite a bit. So excited for the next one and to see where we go in the third one. So after that, I read what might possibly be my newest favorite T. Kingfisher book. And that book is Snake Eater. What a book. So it follows this character, Selena, and her dog, Copper. She goes out to the desert to this town of Quartz Creek, which is a super small town. Her mom had passed away. Her mom seemed like a very controlling religious person in her life who, they didn't have the greatest of relationships, we'll say. And then she was also with this man, Walter. And so when her mom died, he wasn't with her for like a whole month. And she starts to realize that she's very unhappy with him and that most things wrong and stressing her out in her life stem from Walter. So she decides she needs to get away from him. So she's going to go and see her aunt out at this Quartz Creek place because her and her aunt had kept in touch through postcards. And her aunt was like, if you ever want to come visit, that'd be awesome. So she comes out there and she finds out her aunt has passed away. She's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? She's like, I'm going to have to find some work and try to make some money to get a ticket to go back home. And she's seriously contemplating going back to this horrible Walter man. Yuck. Don't do it, girl. But the townsfolk, she starts talking to the mayor, who's also like the police chief and the fire chief, because, like I said, very small town. And she's like, well, you're the next of kin of your aunt who passed, and her house is just sitting there empty, so you can stay there as long as you need. You know, Grandma Billy is your next door neighbor, so do you want to stop and talk to her? Probably be nice for her to have someone staying nearby and whatnot, because Grandma Billy, I think, was in her 70s and, you know, a bit older, and it seems like the townsfolk kind of watch out for each other. So she gets there, and she's like, yeah, I'm not saying. And everyone's so welcoming, and they help her out. And Grandma Billy brings her like eggs every day because she has chickens and she has a ton of eggs. So at least she won't starve. And then there's a potluck at the church in town that's every Wednesday and Saturday. So she starts going to that, and she starts really starting to like these people that she lives around. It's a simpler way of life. She starts gardening and doing all this stuff. And then eventually she starts seeing weird things. Like, she sees a little green man in her garden, and Grandma Billy's like, oh, that's just probably a squash god. There's a lot of gods and weird things out here in the desert. Selena's like, what? What do you mean gods and weird stuff? And eventually she meets one who is a roadrunner god called Snake Eater. And apparently Snake Eater and her aunt used to have a relationship of sorts where they were possibly in love. Snake Eater now decides that since Selena's the next of kin, well, he will just love her now and be the replacement for the aunt. And she's like, that's not how this works. So she's going to have to get some help from the people in town and try to get this crazy god off her butt and leave her alone. And what do? It's cozy, it's sweet, it's not that scary. This is kind of listed as like a horror fantasy, but I say it's horror for people who don't really like horror, because it's not scary. The kindness of the people in town was fantastic. I absolutely loved it. It's great. If you like T. Kingfisher, you'll probably like this book. Definitely check it out. All right, so after that one, I read an Appalachian horror that was like a folk horror called I'll Make a Spectacle of You by Beatrice Winifred Eicher. Follows the main character. She goes to this college, and she wants to do her thesis on like African spirituality in Appalachia. She goes to her advisor, and her advisor's like, no, that's too broad of a subject matter. And he gives her this diary of this librarian, Esther Fisherman, who used to be on their campus there at Brixbury. And she starts delving into this and like finds out there's all these weird rumors about this beast in the woods. And maybe there could be some truth behind this. And there's also been like a weird number of like disappearances over the years and whatnot. And so as she starts to delve into this, she finds out about like weird possible entity in the woods, a secret society. The townsfolk don't really want to like let her in and whatnot. And she starts to dig deeper. She might just possibly be in danger. And it's a great horror. I really liked it. I love like a good folk horror. It's almost like a dark academia because it takes place at college, and then it's also like in the woods, and it has a good vibe to it. It's weird, it's creepy, great atmosphere. Would recommend if you are a fan of folk horror. After that one, I read book 2 in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, Carl's Doomsday Scenario. So Carl and Princess Donut, they make it to dungeon level 3, and now they can pick like their class and their race. And so they're going to do that. They're going to keep leveling up. And in this part of the dungeon, there's also it's like the overworld. It's not really, but there's a sky, and there's day, and there's night. There is an actual ceiling though. It's kind of projected on there and whatnot, but there's different little villages and towns, and now they've introduced quests. They get into this. There's a whole like crazy thing that happens with this weird cursed circus that has like some sort of like, it seems like alien mold that's infecting all the creatures and stuff, where they have like worms in themselves, and they all seem like symbiotic hive mind almost connected to the old circus guy. And they run into this elite character who used to be part of the circus, but she didn't get infected with the curse, and so she wants Carl and Donut to help her, and what the F is going to happen. And then they get into this deeper, and there's this other quest that they come upon that there's all these prostitutes that are being like dropped from the sky, and their bodies are just being dumped in the streets. And so they get this quest to find out what the heck is going on. That leads them down this road to, you know, possibly having a whole town blow up and kill several people if they can't figure out how to fix this thing that they've done. So it's a crazy book, addictive. I liked it just as much as the first book, and I'm super excited for the third book. Okay, so after that, I read a short little novella called The Swamps by Serafina Nova Glass. And it follows these people who have like a paranormal YouTube channel, and there's been these missing women in the swamps. And so they go down there. It's not their typical thing that they do. Normally they're more into the paranormal element, but they have a possibility of a deal with Netflix. And so like the whole true crime element of this, they decide they'll go down and see what's going on. I thought it was okay. There seemed to be a few plot holes in this one. Like, they go and they stay at this weird cabin, right? But it turns out, you find out later that, so the two main people, it's like Macy and her husband or boyfriend, I think it's her husband, Ethan. Ethan's family is like from that area, and they literally had a cabin just across the way that you could get to by boat. Why didn't they stay there? That's freaking weird. And there's another point too that I thought was like, dude, you would want to get that checked out. One of the characters gets bitten by a human, and if you know anything about like human bites, never says if it breaks skin, but I am led to believe the way it was written that skin was broken, maybe. That could get seriously infected. And like, if you're ever bitten by a human, like you need to clean that right away and possibly go to a doctor and make sure that shit doesn't get infected so you don't get like some horrible thing and lose part of your hand. There was just like little things like that where I feel like this writer has potential to be really good, but there was a few things that were just kind of like, maybe pay a little more attention to the details, because it left me not loving it. So while not a bad book, like I still read the whole thing. I didn't DNF it. And I'm an avid DNFer, which is, if you don't know what DNF is, it's did not finish or do not finish. But, you know, I think as time goes on, if this person keeps writing, that their books will probably get better, because it was a decent book. Anyways, so my favorite books out of all of these were the two Dungeon Crawler Carl ones. Those were awesome. I absolutely loved them. Do you have any favorites that you read this month? Let me know down in the comments. Always curious. And if you enjoyed hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.